Okay, welcome aboard everyone. It's fantastic as always to have you here for our what's going to be our last Real Schools webinar for this year. We'll be back fit and firing again for next year for sure. But I do want to welcome you all aboard for our last one for this year. It's obviously again a topic that people are great with in planning for next year, which is very valid for people to be doing, is how we can do something about this whole bullying area. It's obviously a topic that not only is on high alert in terms of our parents, but it's one that we would like not to have as a feature of our school communities. And I hope today that we can make some ground on for you. We're obviously continuing to hit a note that resonates with a lot of people, particularly in the school leadership space, because our numbers for our leadership webinars continue to grow. And even though it's November, and I know full what like for school leaders in November, I was again delighted to have really high registrations for this webinar. So whether it's live, whether you're one of the people who are watching it as a team, or whether you're one of the people who are planning to watch later video, I welcome you, and hopefully we can give you some more strategy today to be able to help you in 2016 with some change and some real impetus around what not only what bullying is, but what we can actually do about it. I guess in moving forward, I want to begin the presentation today by making some of the dangerous assumptions. I'm going to make the first assumption that you're not stupid, and you're from a leadership perspective, and you're not here to want someone to preach to you for an hour or so about what bullying is and working you through the various definitions of what instances might or might not be bullying. Where obviously, if you're looking for definitions around bullying, stuff around bullying about power, about being repeated, and about it being harmed are probably the three P's that you need to have in mind when you begin, I guess, the rationale for some policy moving forward. I'm making the assumption that you know what bullying does, in that you understand the impacts are very similar on both the perpetrator and the victim of bullying. What we do know about them is that they are at higher risk in life of in dysfunctional relationships, of employed, into being incarcerated. We also know that they have lower income levels and things like that as they go higher, the more they are exposed to bullying, whether it is from the perpetrator or from the victim point of view. So we want to be able to do something about it, both. You also no doubt that there is a high likelihood that you're going to be in a conversation during bullying. It's most likely with a parent, and you also probably know that to be able to get around bullying, you're going to need to see on it. So I'm going to assume that you actually already know all of those little things and not go into any greater detail about them, because what I'd really like to do today is to get into what it is actually about it. And I'm here today to have a bit of a chat with you about the culture it is that rejects bullying, or that makes bullying behaviours a little difficult to happen. And it is, in fact, only working on culture around this eliminates bullying behaviour in isolated incidents. If you did come today looking for the bullying bullet or the 12-step program, you're about to be disappointed, and I dare you to stick around, because I'm not about to tell you that the first step is to defeat bullying, step 2 is to put this sign up and things like that, because we've been down the track far too many times in our schools. The relics of it are all over the place. All of us have certain posters or certain features and icons up around the school from bullying program since implemented and long since starved to death. And we want to walk away from that now and say, let's get practical. Let's have a look at the cultural hallmarks of schools where bullying isn't a problem. What is it that they actually culturally are doing really well? And then what beneath that, what are the strategies that they are deploying or allowing them to build a culture that rejects bullying? I remember myself being a principal of a school where we recorded some really lovely bullying data, and as exec directors do, who sit above us, we had they saw the data that we've been recording around bullying in our student perception stuff and our parent perception stuff, and a study group of principals from another state were invited to come along to my school and have, because they were doing stuff around bullying. And so they arrived an hour and a half later, because you get plenty of notice, and I did what principals do when they panic in that situation, and just took them on a tour And I remember taking them into a year 3 class, and a young Indigenous girl was there that a couple of the principals walked over and started talking to, and they asked her very directly, what does this school do about bullying? And my beautiful student looked at her with a very puzzled look on her face, and the principal again sort of probed and said, bullying, if people aren't nice to each other, and people are picking on each other, what does the school do about that? And she sort of looked at these two very experienced and learned principals, though they were doing, well, nothing, because we just don't do that sort of thing. And I sat there with a warm heart, sitting there going, good girl. And she certainly picked herself up a couple of awards and things like that, because she said all the right things for me. But it was a fabulous example for me of, we don't actually need to say we do this program, or we do that punishment, or we have this program that kids who are bullies go into. What we need is a culture that rejects the idea of doing things that are power-based, that are repeated, and are about harming other people. So as much as it's, it's possible to get some short-term improvements, then what we need to do is look at the new ways that we can do something about it. And what that's really about is working on our culture. So let's just step back for a moment. I'm mindful, as always, that we do have newbies in there. I'm always really delighted to find that we've got people who are new to our Real Schools webinars. So sometimes when you come on and you've got that control panel, and usually Bob's up for me on the right hand of the screen, and I'm hoping that he's got the same sort of control panel. I know that when I logged on today, webinar software Citrix prompted me to download a new version. So I'm mindful that you might have been in the same boat, and there's a couple of new little buttons and features and things like that that are in there, and sometimes look a little like this. I'll walk you through very quickly how you can participate, because we want this to be a interactive kind of event for you. And one of the ways that you can participate is the hand up function. So you'll notice that there's a little hand on your control panel, and just like an ordinary classroom, you're capable of being able to put your hand up to contribution. So I'm going to keep it out periodically to see if you have something that you would like to add to the conversation. Sometimes when you've got your hand up, it's like a classroom, I can get preoccupied and not notice the poor child with the cramping muscles who has their hand up. So bear with me around that and be patient. But if you do have something that you would like to contribute by putting your hand up, I'm going to unmute you, and we can actually interact, and you can ask that question verbally and get an answer verbally to it. There's also a question box that you'll see in your control panel, and I'm going to keep a little eye on the question box as well. And not only because you might have questions throughout the webinar, I'm going to sort of go and visit that every now and then, but you might have some sort of issue, even if it's a technical issue. You may have a question that's about the slide that we're on at a particular time that you'd like to make sure that we deal with straight away. And so you can pop that question in there, and the wonderful Chris, who's online today, she's our Real Schools business manager, she's keeping an eye on the question box for me as well. So if it's a technical issue, Chris will try and take care of that for you. And Chris will also do a really great job of alerting me if there are some questions in there about the content of the webinar. And also, I guess, even in your box there, if you want to state in your that let's answer this at the end, then we can do that, because I'm going to do my my best to make sure we actually allocate a little bit of time to questions at the end. And so I'll put a slide in there to remind myself that we do have question time. It is important that we have people the opportunity, because sometimes I get on a roll, I talk too much. And so I'm really determined today that we actually answer some contextual questions that allow you to place this in the context of your school. I want to remind you all also that we're recording them today, so the webinar will be available. People who make it today, we've got registrations from as far west as Perth today, and we've got registrations from as far east as New Zealand today. So we want to make everybody can access that, because 3:30 is not the perfect time for absolutely everybody. So we're recording that today, and this will also be uploaded into the member section of our Real Schools website for any of our member schools who would like to access it now down the track. All right, so that's how you can get involved today. So let's start to work our way forward and start to have a little bit of a chat about you, as we like to do when we're in any of our Real Schools webinars, is that we like to find out who you are, where you view the battle from. This battle around, it's often a battle, we're hearing people everywhere saying how we win the war on bullying. And it always conjures up interesting images in my mind, and you know, even this one here, it reminds me that the generals will often bully battle from a different perspective than the soldier, and we'll want to be coordinated, and we all want to be doing our job. We certainly see it from a different position, and for me, being able to understand what you're seeing it from is critically being able to tailor or differentiate our own learning today. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll here, and it's going to ask you, if you could, to let me know where you're seeing this from. Are you a principal or system leader? Are you an assistant principal? Are you a senior or a leading teacher in that kind today? Are you just an aspiring leader? And I've probably got my language wrong there. Not just an aspiring leader, someone who's got there firmly on the leadership path for your work, or are you somebody in a teaching role who's here today to find out how not only you might be able to, from a practice perspective, get some traction, but how it is also that you might be able to infect others with that process. So I always look when we're doing our webinars to get myself at least above that 80%, or to give you a minimum so to vote, and we've gotten well above 80% quickly. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to close the poll and I'm going to share our results here. And so what you can see here is that we've principals around today, and some APs as well. About a fifth of our audience are up in the front office, and then we've got quite a large proportion of people who are either in the senior or leading teacher, looking into leadership, or directly working in the classroom. So I'm going to make sure that I feel that is that I make sure that I'm catering for everybody, and making sure that practice is what we're talking about here. I want to thank Kate. We know that we've got some ES staff members in the audience today as well. So I read an option to the poll. Unfortunately, they only let me have 5. So I'm always really quick to put support staff in, but I might count you as a teacher for the purpose of today, if that's okay. So I'm just going to hide those results there and head back to our slide deck, which for some reason seems, there we go. We're back in action. Okay, the second that I have for you today is very much trying to find out what your challenge is. I love this picture when I saw it today. I thought, wow, if you're going to set someone a challenge, really good one. And it reminded me that every challenge is incredibly unique. And so what I am looking for here is to find out, what is it about bullying that I find particularly challenging? So I make sure that impact the way that I do my talking today, and I perhaps even can use studies that allow me to understand that. So what is it that's what is your big bad bullying challenge? So change practice of staff, that is the big thing. Is it about communicating that clear community definition of bullying? And I guess if your biggest challenge around bullying is parent complaints, then you might be the tick box. Is it about strategy? Is it about actually what are we supposed to do somewhere with this? Is it about moving away from a punitive model? So if people, when bullying conjures a whole heap of emotions, we tend to go back to strong default, and often the we have from our own time at school are about punitive models of being able to deal with poor behaviour. So sometimes we default to that, and it's really hard to get people to break that paradigm and to move forward. And sometimes it's about, how can we actually not do something that's a one-off, that has a short-term hit, and we want to actually have a long-term plan for improvement. What is it that need to do to be able to get some traction in the long run, which is actually playing the cultural game, is moving forward over the extended period. So thank you. We've got some really, really interesting responses there. I can still see my vote percentage going up, so I'll give it another couple of seconds before I close the poll. And I'll let it go there. I'll close the poll and share those results with you. And what we can see here is we've got 2 clear leaders. So how is it long term we can build a culture that rejects those bullying behaviours? And then secondly, we're looking for something, what we are supposed to do. So I certainly entered into the whole idea of building an art that would try those 2 nails on the head. So really glad to see that, and I think that we I think that we can do something about that as we move forward. Okay, so let's get stuck into it, guys. I want to, like I said, I'm not here today to give you information that you've already heard. So I'm here to try and let you know that I think that there's a fundamental issue with how we have bullying, and I want to declare that straight up, is that bullying is not a behavioural problem. Everybody running around talking about what are we going to do in behaviours, and it's leading us down the wrong garden path here. Bullying is not a behavioural problem, it is a cultural problem. And what I mean by that is it's a little bit like saying to, you know, if all of a sudden we've got a bullying situation, we want to treat the behaviour, it's a little bit of treating the symptom and not the cause. So deal with it from a behaviour perspective all the time is a little bit like telling someone who's already got lung cancer that they need to quit smoking. You know, it's sure they should do it, they should, you know, change that behaviour, but it's late. The damage has already been done, and we certainly have nothing prevent other people getting lung cancer. So the idea that we should bring lung cancer patients to quit to the behaviour that's causing a problem, looking at it through far too new perspective, step back into the behavioural cycle to get somewhere, and that actually starts to look at the culture of the organisation we have. One of the models around moving from behaviour is realise where behaviour sits in schools. We often think that behaviour comes first, and then we need to react in some way. It's actually not the model by which most of us learn to behave. In fact, it's a pretty simple little ABC model that you can understand here that tells us a little bit about the way we behave. And if we look at whether A is the antecedent or the trigger or the conditions in which a behaviour occurs, B is the behaviour itself, which might be something like, you know, pushing somebody over, excluding somebody, you know, mean on Facebook about them, saying something nasty about them, and C is that we jump in, is the consequence that's applied either by us or that comes naturally as a result of that behavioural choice. If we ask ourselves a lot of the time where in school we usually jump in, most people will answer to me that we jump in around the BC level. So it's either as the behaviour happens or just after it we apply a consequence. And what we're forgetting here is that no behaviour happens in isolation. You know, no behaviour happens without some sort of trigger for it. You know, even, you know, I often use the example of going on a diet. You know, that behaviour doesn't just happen randomly. We don't just wake up and accidentally eat half a grapefruit. Usually there's been some thinking that's happened before it. Might have been a trigger of seeing a photo of us, or, you know, a few years ago we were leaner and trimmer and more vibrant, or been you know, an ad on television for the new NutriBullet thingy, whatever it might be, some trigger for that may have us think a different way, and that behaviour then occurs, and then there's a consequence for that behaviour. It's either positive or it's negative. It's either positive in that you completely hated the you know, the wonderful NutriBullet concoction of spinach and Brussels sprouts, or the consequence might be positive in that you couple of kilo and you felt much better and were more happier being in front of the photo, being in the next photo. So find that if we step back from the behaviour and get back into antecedent land, this is when we start to think about thinking. This is when we start to think about culture. So they're the two areas that we get when we can take a strong A focus. We start work culturally, we think about the conditions and the triggers that we are providing, and we also start to think about thinking, which gets us out of the reactive mode, doing something bullying when it's all happened. So what we do is to build a culture. The thinking happens in some way that it drives a positive behaviour. So let's just forward culture for just a moment here, because like culture, when I talk to people about culture, people often get very broad about it and even pretty vague and stuff. So, you know, culture's the atmosphere or the feeling or the vibe around this. And I actually think that if we're going to, you know, if we're going to do something about developing culture that's bullying and that is highly relational and highly respectful, then we need to get clear on what culture is. My definition of culture is pretty simple. It's that it's a set of behaviours that we both encourage. So the behaviours that we say, you know what, that's fantastic, that's what we stand for, that fits in with everything that we're doing, and we'd really love to see you do more of that. Terrific. We green light those behaviours, and then whether we like it or not, our culture is all driven by the behaviours that we tolerate, the behaviours that for some reason we're not quite sure how to either change or challenge. So what we want to do, we're going to develop a strong expectation, high expectation culture, and it's certainly within those cultures that bullying doesn't happen as prevalently. What we want to do is to say, okay, how can we build in structures as leaders that encourage the correct behaviours, and how can we bring in structures and processes that allow us to change and challenge the behaviours we don't wish to tolerate? Because whether these behaviours are chosen by us or not, they are contributing just as strongly as those that we want to have in the school to our culture. So we need to work really hard on what are the mechanisms for us being able to do that within our culture. Which means that we're starting to say, okay, we need to work in culturally is about changing thinking rather than changing behaviour. We are taking an unnecessary and unproductive shortcut. When we look only at trying to directly change the behaviour of our students, and indeed culturally, all of the literature points towards the thinking that needs to change isn't necessarily ours. The influence around culture is most high in two particular key groups. One, it is the leadership school. So if you are in any sort of leadership in your school, you are the most significant contributor to culture through your behaviour and through the thinking that you choose. So if the set of behaviours that you exhibit as some sort of pattern are respectful, relational, optimistic, consistent, then you will be contributing to a culture that reflects that. If they are punitive, if they are emotional, then we can expect that we are contributing incredibly strongly to a culture that reflects those things too. The second set of people who contribute most significantly to culture are our teachers and our support staff. So really what we're talking about here is if we're going to create a culture that rejects bullying, then what we really need to do is to start to think about what's the thinking and then what's the behaviour of the leaders and of the staff members in our school. And it's a fronting concept, because really the truth is that we can moan about parents and we can moan about the small of students that really take up a huge amount of our time and our energy and our effort and our stress, all we like. But it's actually us who needs to change first. So this is what today's all about, guys. It's about we can actually adopt and to work through thinking about how we'll be the ones that change, because we are certainly the ones that are having the largest influence on our culture. So in thinking about staff, what I actually have been working on for a little while now is a bit of a model that I'm a model fan that allows me to put my thing in a particular place. And there are two key planks that I would say need to be in place for us to be able to say a paradigm shift for our people that are looking to change the practice of staff, or who are looking to establish strategy moving forward. We're going to need to change our thinking. There are two key planks that need to be in here. Number one is the consistency of our language. So having established and front-loading to our brains the types of languages and the type of phrases that we're expected to use collectively and consistently, whether it's a small issue in terms of behaviour and power-based action, or whether it's a really big, serious problem. We're right down having some sort of mediation or coaching to try and get somewhere about. Can we establish some sort of consistency in our language? And schools that do that are the ones that are definitely being able to determine some sort of success trajectory around bullying. And the second thing that's really important is that there is practice reflection for the key people in the school. That's the staff, that's the leaders and the team. Is there a structure that allows the teachers and the leaders in the school to sit down and to actually discuss how am I going with, can we actually talk about case studies, even if for a short period of time, but regularly? What those regular opportunities around reflection provide is to be able to step a higher plane of I guess we're talking about, even in the old Bloom's taxonomy language, we're talking about a culture that's very much by design rather than just understanding. So what we get when we actually get a match or a mismatch in these is 4 different types of culture that I want you to think about, I guess, placing your school within. In that bottom left box where we've got low consistency of language, we might have good people, but they're all operating from their own framework. And we've also got a low level of practice reflection, as we get very much a default-based culture, means that people basically revert to their defaults under pressure. The problem problem with that is that it's very mood or energy dependent. We get issues with transitions. So what I mean by that is that students will behave differently for one teacher than they do for another. And we often find the dynamic of students in a primary environment of going from, you know, 1 year level to the next and needing to be retaught how to be in that environment for the first term. They miss an incredible amount of learning. And in a secondary environment, it manifests very much as it's boundary test to heaven. So what I mean by that is that, you know, students who don't know clearly where the boundaries are because the language changes all the time are really highly tempted to do what they do best, and that test boundaries. So it's a really emotional place to hang out. And you can probably understand that if we're dependent on our energy or our mood to be consistent, then what happens is that we perform completely differently on a Monday than we do on a Friday. We completely conform very differently, certainly in the middle of term 4 than we might in the middle of term 1, and it's not where a strong, consistent relational culture comes from. If we were to step from there, guys, and look at the top left here, where we talk about a compliance type culture or a compliance-driven culture. This is where we do have some sort of consistency in language, but the practice reflections no. This is where we've fallen for the trap of getting down the path of you know, statements like "stop it, I don't like it" when it comes to bullying. We tell kids all the time to say "stop it, I don't like it" and place a finger in the air. And I don't know about you, but I am just so tired of "stop it, I don't like it." I've heard it that many times that I think it's actually lost meaning. And I think most when a child being bullied is using that strategy, they're using something that the bully kind of thinks is funny. And because I've heard it times, no impact behind it. And so we get very program dependent. We put posters up, we put, you know, icons of the various programs that we've tried. We buy resources. We you know, build with CDs in our classrooms and in our libraries. And the problem with all of that is that if just looking from a resource or a language or a program point of view, is that growth doesn't happen. In fact, most of these programs get a quick hit. We get a short hit from programs. We think actually really on the track, and then they play a so laborious death because they actually step any further than language isn't. So the opportunity to actually talk about their practice and to step up from "stop it, I don't like it" and program what video is something that we certainly need to encourage. If we go the opposite from there and go down to the bottom corner, I talk about a culture that is in by internalisation, which means that we get very aspirational in the way that we want our culture to develop. So we've built policy for it. So we've got the opportunity to sit down and talk about it and what sort of culture we want. But there's a gap between policy and practice with that discrepancy, and it's incredibly frustrating because we have staff who have wonderful intentions, who might know a lot about bullying and be really passionate about work, and that's something that says, yeah, what we want to do, and then they get together and they talk about the issues, but we still go away and work from our own implicit frameworks, which isn't good enough because the consistency in language isn't there. So we need to get ourselves past that, step up to the top right corner where we build what I'm describing a respectful culture. Respectful cultures are formed by high expectations and high support, but they're also incredibly accountable, and a lot happens in the cultures. What we find, if you think and look at behaviour, one of the most successful behavioural change techniques is behaviour replacement therapy. And what it's about is saying what behaviours could we put in place of the negative behaviours, because when we move a negative behaviour, we don't operate in something needs to fill it place. And so what we do is we find that the highly respectful cultures tend to be productive places where learning behaviours replace the behaviours that previously had been very negative and unproductive and harmful. And this is where we would say that we were very thinking focused in the way that we were. So taking that step back in the ABC model, and we're not going to any longer, you know, fall for the trap of only jumping in as a behaviour and applying a consequence, that the majority of our work is back in and where we're thinking hard about what are the triggers, what are the conditions, and what are the outcomes we're getting as a result of thinking about that. So this is a way of thinking about it as a staff, and what we want to do also today before we get away on him is to make sure that we get, you know, incredibly practical. So let's have a look right now at what are the features features of schools, and there's been fantastic literature and research produced around this area, but what are the features of schools where bullying isn't a problem? Those schools that colloquially bat out of their crease or punch above weight. What is it that they have in place that others don't? And what we're finding is that there are 6 key ones, okay? So the key identifiers of schools where bullying isn't a big. Number one is the policy thing is really in place and it's very clear. It's a concise policy, it's short, and it's very clear about what is the whole school approach that we have in place to preventing bullying from a cultural perspective, and that policy has been what we call deprivatised. And what we mean by that is that it's very much been in the hands of the staff from development through to its implementation, and it's revisited regularly. The leadership of the school draws attention back to this policy with some sort of regularity. The other thing that's really key to notice in the literature is that the reliance on program rather than approach counterproductive to what we're trying to do. So teaching bullying on Wednesday afternoons, and in fact teaching anti-bullying on Wednesday afternoons, is a really almost destructive thing to do. If I can stop and just dwell on that for a moment, the whole idea that anti-bullying programs can work to me is deeply inherently flawed. The notion that we have an enemy that we need to be anti here is counter to everything that a really successful school culture should be. We don't have an enemy when it comes to bullying. We're not trying to defeat the bullies. We're not trying to win the war with the bullies. What we're on about is engineering behaviour change, and we need to get really clear about what is it that changes behaviour. It is thinking, and then the changes thinking is regular, consistent, immersion style exposure to a fantastic culture. We cannot change the thinking of our young people by implementing a program and putting on a video on a Wednesday afternoon. Forgive the rant there, but it's incredibly. The truth is that I don't want any of your schools out there to feel that they need to go and spend some more money on an anti-bullying program anymore. We've had enough case studies now of unsuccessful attempts to cure bullying through a program. The next thing that's really important to pay attention to is that there are reflective opportunities structured for staff. So this is about not saying that we need to just develop the policy, it's about saying how does staff make sense of it, and can we develop an implementation plan that demonstrates that in term one together, and we talk about this aspect. So we'll talk about this aspect of discipline, or we'll talk about this aspect of engagement, this aspect of language, and we structure through a year to make sure that there are consistent and ongoing opportunities for staff to get together in a less than PD-ish kind of way, but more about conversational and dialogue intent. Do they have the opportunity to come together and to talk about that? A plan for implementation should certainly also include how it is that we're training our staff and how it is that they're getting the chance to talk about it, what should be the icons in their programs and in our own strategic plans moving forward, how it is that we're going to communicate with the community. I want to talk to that in just a moment, and having an over-communication plan about that is probably the best way to consider it. And then what are the features that we should be able to see in the classroom and indeed in the yard of a culture that is injecting bullying behaviour. Number 4 is what we find is really important to develop a bullying rejecting culture or a strong relational culture is to look at different ways to communicate with our community. There are so many channels available to us that are beyond the newsletter, and in schools we had a default towards the newsletter for so long time that we've even stopped thinking about it. We now if you think about even just about our newsletter just a moment, even though the research is that 0.8% parents, about the average of them that are reading newsletter cover to cover. Even if you think about what we're doing newsletter to get attention, most of the time the page of the newsletter says principals report. And I don't know about you, but I'm not particularly turned on principals report in a way that makes me read the 500 words. So, writing from an editorial perspective can help give people a really great headline to work from. I know that I've got a partner school at Roberts Recover where Margaret Pickburn's doing some fabulous work in the area at the moment, and just trying to change the way that she communicates. But if you think also about the multitude of other channels that we have to meet with our parents, they include some great apps out there that many people are downloading on the smartphones, like TickBiz. Compass for text messaging is a great tool. Messages out there. There are still tools out there that are very social media averse and are completely petrified of Facebook. Can I just allay that fear for you that schools who communicate with their community tend to nearly all have an operating and an active Facebook page, and if people are wondering how I can get started with a Facebook page, I'm not going to webinar on that. What I'm going to point to is Edutopia. You've created a fantastic one-pager. So if you go to Google and you Google Edutopia school Facebook page, you will create a fantastic place for beginners to start 4 things you shouldn't post about, and then how to go a bit further if you get better and better at it. Great. Think about how you can meet your parents, because if you can use even there's some fantastic devices and companies out there like Buffer that will schedule your postings on social media, even across other platforms, Facebook, Twitter, all of those kind of places where parents are. And the truth is that the parents, particularly the mums of primary school age kids, of school age, not just primary school age kids, the parent school age kids amongst the highest penetration of social media available. So we need to meet them where they are and communicate with them where they are. And we think about the signs at the front of school and how we change those regularly, our websites, our classroom walls, and we've got many Real Schools partners who are putting up some fantastic behaviour elevation plans as a means of being able to make it explicit for absolutely everybody how it is that we're working. And so just understand that there are school council meetings, parents sending videos and posting them on social media. Really fantastic ways to get the message to people. It all sounds like a lot of work, but the truth is that if we can get 6 to 7 really positive messages to our parents about the culture that we're creating, about how we do relationships and conflict, what happens is that when their child comes home with a complaint about the school, they're less likely to come down on the table because they've already decided 6 times, I like that, I like what my school does. So they tend to come down with a Socratic, asking questions approach, rather than coming down with an adversarial and religious kind of approach. Moving along, before they're about communication with the community, is that there is a positively geared message in the school around conflict. There's a strong, universal agreed understanding that conflict is a healthy part of any system and indeed any relationship. That most really great relationships have an argument from time to time and can have a really good, robust stand-up blue from time to time. But the thing is, they understand the rules for it, and they understand that sometimes that's where productivity lives, in those arguments and those difficulties. So we're not about trying to get rid of conflict here. What we're on about is saying that we understand that it's a healthy and inevitable part of that system, and we're ready. We're ready. We've got a plan for that in moving forward. And the last thing that we're finding that schools, the schools who are really good at this bullying thing, they have a shared concern methodology. And what I mean by that they've got the knife firmly in place. When we do have your traditional perpetrator versus victim bullying scenario, that what this should be is a learning and improvement opportunity for both. That where we forget and we throw our attention in one direction, where we might go right into punishment mode and do a whole heap of things to the perpetrator on behalf of the victim, but basically leave them out of it, is that we get half the return for half the effort. When we throw all of our attention and effort over onto the victim side and we do nothing about improving the thinking, the learning, the behaviour of the perpetrator, again, we only get half the reward. So schools where there's a shared concern methodology, where we're actually concerned about both people here, and we look to try and make sure that we have action and improvement on both sides, is where we begin to get somewhere. So if you're serious about this, and I guess in terms of moving forward, we do need to ask ourselves if we really are serious, if we really do want to know what it is that schools need to do move forward. You've got some frames there about what are the key cultural icons, but I also want to take you if you're serious here about getting real bullying, what it is that you can do about it, what it is that the strategies are of schools that are successful about in this sphere. The University of London, and look, I know London's not Australia on that, but the wonderful part about this study that I found when I was doing research for this topic is that this study is probably the most comprehensive in terms of an entire jurisdiction. 1,378 schools I looked at, and looked at not just which strategies were the most prevalent, but they looked at which strategies were the most effective. Which were the schools that were getting the highest levels of improvement through the strategies across 1,300 schools. Now, to me, I'm a really big fan of not reinventing the wheel. So I'm really keen to find out here which of things that other people are doing that have already worked so that I can pick it up and run with. What we find here is that to take you through the top 10 here, the 10th most effective is peer mediation and listening skills, so teaching the kids how to talk to each other, putting the power of being able to resolve bullying situations back in their head tends to be a productive thing to do. Cooperative learning is also really effective in reducing bullying, and what that's about is we're telling the kids it's not just about work, it's just about playing together in a productive when there's a lack of structure. It's about saying, how could we together in a more productive way. One of the things that is really strong in terms of the few factors against bullying is around achievement and knowing things about each other and bringing people together in the learning environment. Our defaults around bullying over the last perhaps, I don't know, 200 years or so have very much divide and conquer, and I know that myself, I have heard myself in a bullying situation say, hey, you just stay away from him for a little while. The truth is, environments that bring together in a core way, Kagan cooperative learning is a rip I've had some exposure to about bringing young people together, and I couldn't recommend more highly that you think bringing cooperative learning into your environment. Quality and regular classroom circles as a means for kids to both prevent and to respond to bullying is important. Improving the school environment, what we find is that kids who are in a really stimulating and high environment is important. So in the school is actually something that you can do to improve the behaviour of the young people in that environment. Systems that support parent and carer involvement, so finding active ways to get them involved, and that leads us into number 5, the whole notion of a school council involvement in bullying being crucial. Number 4 is the use, funnily enough, I wasn't expecting this, the use of assemblies. What we find is that schools that actually regularly talk about how we respect each other, how we work together, and that celebrate that at assemblies through their musical items, with their rewards, and schools actually get somewhere around bullying. I'm anticipating that one, but like I said, I think that it's an important one nonetheless. Schools that focus on how to be a strong citizen, how to actually be a member of a community, they get somewhere. Certainly, if we link back to our notion of who is most strongly influencing school culture, us, and it was our teachers. The kids first, it was us and it was the teachers. So we need to look at our own modelling and how we model positive relationships ourselves. Our students indeed will learn far more from what we do than we say. And number 1 is developing a restorative ethos and culture, discovered by the University of London. So this is a really firm for us at schools because we have a really strong restorative intent. And I love the words in this about ethos and culture. The technology behind the word ethos is everything you say and everything you do, and certainly we're really determined around developing a really fantastic school culture. Now, they're the 10 things that you can do that will make a really strong positive difference in forward. But I also want to point out to you the absence of certain things in here. So if we look in here, the whole idea of bystander training, of getting reactive or direct sanctions, we work programs and school tribunals, while that has sort of impact, they are programs we're just getting the bang for our buck for. We need to be able to say, we need better, and it's these top 10 here that will allow us to, from the smallest amount of investment, get the greatest return in terms of developing a strong bullying culture. So I'm really determined, as I said, to make sure that we have an opportunity for questions today. Now I want to give just a moment to have a little, if you have a question, you can put in that question box. I know that we get shy people, particularly in November, but you can pop it in the question box, or you can hand in the some other opportunities for you to be able to step into some of those 10 things that you can do in just a moment. So we're not going to run out of value here. So don't run away or leave the webinar just yet. But if you do have a question, I want to make sure I answer that for you now. Right, I haven't got any come through just yet, Casey. I'd certainly hope that video was put it out. Look, I'll leave that there for now. If you have a question though, feel free to pop it in while I'm chatting and while I'm moving, because I can return to that, I reckon. A couple of things that you might want to do. Number one, we're incredibly excited about a couple of real schools. Number one is the notion that what we've got next year, with a new person coming on. So if once you're very, very sick of my rantings in a webinar, you get a little bit of variety here, because we've got Ryan Martin joining the team, and Ryan and I, to launch Ryan's involvement in real schools, are going to we're going to run a conference. It's a conference of sorts, because what we're going to do is limit this opportunity to about 30 people, because we really want to make sure this is an opportunity in Melbourne for people to not just sit and listen for a day or two, but to make sure that you actually do some work and leave with something that you can use in 2016. We had some feedback not long ago that the events that we've run through real schools, that people are finding it a real challenge, every other professional or anything, to get away from either the industry school, or to be able to get relief and things like that in the school for your work. So we're going to actually run a 2-day event in January, in the week before everybody gets back to school. So this one is going to be run in Melbourne. Our School Culture Conference is going to be run in Melbourne, and it's going to be on the 21st of January. That's a Thursday, and then on the Friday on the 22nd. A lovely to be in if you happen to start. And day one of this is going to be about getting real about staff wellbeing. Bringing Ryan on board, one of the things that I certainly that attracted me to the notion of getting Ryan in real is not only that he's the 2014 North Territory of the Year, but he has a real bent around staff wellbeing and make sure that our biggest asset is the one that we are looking at in a meaningful way. And he kind of throws rocks at the notion that the way traditional ways that we've been looking at staff wellbeing. And look up Ryan online here at the moment. Ryan, can you hear me all right, mate? Ryan, have you got me? Oh, we were really hoping that this cross was going to work out neatly, but unfortunately I can't hear Ryan. I'll try one more time. Ryan, are you there? We were tried so hard, but unfortunately didn't get there with that one today. Well, Ryan's going to run a day about how we can invest in a really meaningful way in our staff and make sure that their tyres are continually pumped up, and it goes way beyond the idea of that we need to run some really great movies and like that, and talk about work-life balance. Ryan's all about we can build a culture where people achieve at the highest possible level. And so that's what that day is going to be all about. I've been asked all year about the idea of how we lead whole school behaviour improvement, what it is that we need to do. So we've put together a day on that you can register for. And then the idea, I guess, from the conference perspective is that you can make it a 2-day event. So we've kept the cost nice and low for this. We've said, right, we want to get as many people involved as possible. So you can register for either day for $205, and you can register for the whole thing for $395. 2 days of professional learning around leadership and leadership of a school culture for $305. And look, what we'll do today is that if that interests you, if getting involved today, this actually hasn't been launched. It'll be launched next week, but we can actually reserve a couple of spots for you. So if that interests you, get involved in this 2-day event, 1 day or 2 days, then would you just over in the question box and write the word conference for me. And if you pop that in there, our wonderful business manager, Chris, is going to make sure that you get that information first, and she'll check out with you whether you would like to be involved in that event. So all you need to do in that question box is put the word conference, and Chris is going to make sure that we reserve a place for you, and we'll organise registration after that. So we're really excited about that event. The other thing that you might be interested in terms of doing something about the behaviour of our staff members is you might have new members coming on next year, or some graduate staff members coming on, and if you are interested in the Teacher FastTrack program, it's a 12-month commitment, an online program around teacher practice, and if you want some information about the fast, just pop that in FastTrack in the question box, and it's a great program. We're really getting some incredible feedback about this one. Teachers once a month sit down and work their way through a really easy to watch 30 to 45-minute video about a particular aspect of practice. They have a local mentor, the reflection questions they answer, and that we give them a whole heap of other resources as well. So if you're interested in the Teacher FastTrack, then we're going to make that. Excuse me, we're going to make that happen for you as well. And the other thing is that have our partnerships options. So we had so many people today saying, how can we make a long-term difference? Well, one of the things you can do is stop running anti-bullying professional for your team. So we have 3 partnership themes around school culture leadership, around teacher practice and behaviour management, and also around practices, which you'll notice came out nice and highly in the study by the University of London. If the notion of discussing a long-term partnership for your, and we're excited that we've got 7% of our schools already intended partnerships, and 80% of them in 3-year partnerships around restorative practices, and we're new schools all the time. We've got schools for young'uns at things like Narrabundah in ACT. We're starting with next year an early learning an early for educators, and we've got Richmond Primary School in the ACT as well as Dorset Primary School, that we met for the first time yesterday. Island College, which is a P to 12 school for Muslim students in Melbourne, which is fantastic. Camden Haven Secondary College in South Wales that are on board as well. So that's a secondary school working hard on restorative practices. So there's a lot of schools out there that are jumping on, and with Ryan coming on next year, our capacity to be able to help your school out is just. So if you're interested in having a chat about partnership, don't worry, nobody gets sent an invoice. If you're interested in a chat about whether your schools are a good fit for partnership, then again, just go and jump into that question box and write the word partner, and Chris will get in touch with you to opportunity to just have that little chat. We'll just we'll see if whether kicking off a partnership for 26 beyond can be something that can make a difference for your school. All right, let's move towards the end. Go and have a good look around the website, guys. There's lots of resources there and lots of concepts there that might make a difference for you and for your school. Make sure you stay in touch. Use that email address there to send us anything that you might need. We're always happy to help your school out in any way we can. You give your time, we're more than happy to give up some of ours, or give us a bell at 1300 789 422. And look, I'll just finish by saying that thank you. It's been fabulous to have you all in our webinar this year. And whatever Christmas means to you, whatever the end of the year means to you, for your particular culture or faith or wherever it is that you come from, I know that for my family, where there's an eager anticipation about this new Star Wars movie coming out, I know that that's going to dominate my Christmas just a little bit. Don't underestimate the power of the merry side. We'd love to, it's while we want to work with you, it's true that at the end of the year you get a break. So take that, enjoy yourselves. Stay in touch, and we're ready to go with a webinar for you in 2016. Have a good one, guys. Survive term 4, and we'll talk to you soon.